like to discuss today how the Zhubing activity that we did in class connects with Chapter 1 in Content Area Reading and Literacy in our textbook that we read for class. I'm going to be exploring 2 points with you today. The first are assumptions underlying content teaching, and the second is the reading process. Let's begin by looking at some assumptions underlying content teaching. One assumption that we make is that our students are active readers. What does that mean to be an active reader? Well, one of the important things that active readers do is question. And we question before we read, during our reading, and after our reading. So while I was participating in this activity in class, I did a lot of questioning myself. At the beginning of this activity, I was thinking, what is this activity? Why are we doing this? How does this connect with what we're doing? And also some kind of concerns in there, like how am I going to get through this? This is too hard. This is frustrating. I don't know if I can do it. I did do it, and during my reading, I was questioning things like, how do these pieces fit together? Is this all one story? Are these individual stories? The numbers down the side kind of threw me off because I wasn't sure if each was an individual paragraph or if it was one big story. When I finished reading, I still was trying to piece things together and make sense of it all and try to figure out how certain components went together for the story. After I met with my group and have read it a few more times, a lot of that has cleared up, but I still have some questions like, did Mr. Black take his shirt off on the airplane to show the tag to Mr. Gray? That would be kind of weird if he did. Did Mr. Gray really not know about any symbols and Mr. Black had to show him the simplest symbols? And if that's the case, where is Mr. Gray from that he has not seen symbols like that before? The second point that we assume is that our students can become independent readers. How do they go from active readers to independent readers? Well, there's a couple things that have to happen. The first is practice. I found in this activity that the more I practiced the passage, the more independent I became. At first, it was very frustrating, and I wasn't able to get through it, but by the end, I could read it pretty smoothly with very few flaws. The second thing that needs to happen is group time. And we think of independence as, oh no, I don't need your help, I can do this on my own. But in reality, we do need peers and we do need groups to help us get through. I found that when I went through the article on my own, it was frustrating, it was chunky, it was not smooth at all. Then when I met with my group, one of the girls in my group, she was able to look at this and just figure it out. And she was a great asset to me because it helped me get a lot more understanding about what this text was really about. And it helped me become more independent so that I could do it later on my own. Kind of going along with that is the idea of fluency. Fluency can be defined as speed, accuracy, and expression. When I first read this text, there was no speed, no accuracy, and no expression at all. I was literally just laboring through the process of trying to read the text. I gained more of each of those things with each read, and by the end, I felt like I could read it pretty fluently. Definitely had gained some speed, still not as speedy as if I was reading words, but some speed and a lot more accuracy, and definitely I was able to use some expression, especially on the parts where he fell and things like that. When I got home, I thought, well, I'm just going to give this to my husband and see how he can do with it. And he gave it, the old college try, but he couldn't get through it, and he quickly gave up and said, can you just tell me what this story's about? And so I did. I sat him down. I was able to read it to him, and I was able to do that with a lot more fluency at that point because I'd read it probably about 10 times by that point. The second area I would like to cover with you is the reading process. There are several steps in the reading process, and I'm going to cover 3. The first is prior knowledge and schema. This is one area that my group and I discussed a lot, because if you didn't have prior knowledge about flying, this text would be very difficult. I myself have flown, however, I've only flown once. So my background knowledge is probably quite different than someone who's flown 10 or 15 or more times, but it's also quite different from someone who's never flown at all. With my flying experience, I can throw in TV shows, books, newspaper, news reports, and build a pretty solid background knowledge. For example, I never...
Mrs. Hall and Mrs. Rickman, if you are ready for our 9:15 meeting. Oh, there you are. Welcome.
Sorry about that interruption. If I combine all of those components together, I have a pretty solid understanding of flying. For example, I have never experienced turbulence on a plane. So if that was my only experience, I might not have been able to figure out the symbol for turbulence. But since I've seen shows and read books and things like that, I was able to quickly figure that out. So the question becomes, what if someone has never flown in their life? They would not have sufficient prior knowledge to read this text. What do we do for them? Well, I was going to show you this. For example, maybe they've never seen this symbol before. Okay? So what we can do is we can bridge that gap. They don't know this symbol. As they're reading along the text, they may come to this symbol and stop because they're frustrated and they don't know what it means. This symbol, in reality, was not super important to the passage. It was just kind of a little side note. But this might be enough to make me shut down because I don't have the knowledge. So as teachers, we can introduce some vocabulary. This could be our vocabulary word, and we could define that for our students before they read. Maybe there's 3 or 4 things that we're thinking that they might struggle with. We can give them that ahead of time. If they have very limited experience or no experience at all, then we could give them more vocabulary. Perhaps someone has no concept of flying. This might not be the text to start them with. Perhaps I could give them an easier text with limited vocabulary, get them through that, build some background knowledge, and then have them attack this harder text. The last point is metacognition. And metacognition just simply means knowing about knowing, or knowing what you know. And so we experienced this in our group. Some of those symbols we just knew right away, and others we kind of had to look at a little more closely. So, for example, this symbol I might not know immediately, or the one that we struggled with was the double mint gum symbol. We thought it was a gum symbol, but we weren't really sure. It had been a long time since we'd seen that symbol, so we quickly looked it up and we were correct and we were able to move on, so we used that strategy. However, the circle with the slash, that's a symbol we've known our whole lives, and we were able to grab that symbol right away and know that it meant no smoking or no cell phones or whatever. But sometimes we do just know, and we need to allow our students that freedom as well. Like, we ask them what strategy they used or whatever, but sometimes you just know what you know. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that this activity helped me as a teacher because it gave me some empathy for my students when I hand them a new piece of text and I expect them to read it and understand it right away. And it showed me that sometimes it takes multiple readings before you truly understand what a text says. I also considered, our standardized testing where we give a student a passage, they have to answer questions, and they have to write an essay. And not only that, but they only have 1 hour to do it. And I was thinking about myself with this, that an hour probably wouldn't have been enough time for that. So as a teacher, I'm able to control a lot of things in my classroom and build that confidence for them before giving them the text.